before I even went into the office to have the conversation with my boss, I was in my office and a voice said to me to turn around. There was nobody in my office. There was, it wasn't on the phone, it wasn't on a computer, there was nothing. It was just this voice said to me, turn around. I turned around to look at the back wall of my office. And on that back wall, I looked at I had all my degrees and all my certifications and all my things. And I just sat there for a second and I looked around. And then out of nowhere, and I promise you, like out of nowhere, and I had never, ever, ever in my life said these words, out of nowhere, these three words came out of my mouth. Welcome to another episode of Speaking of Speaking. They say the law is a jealous mistress. She's also a restrictive asshole and the best thing that ever happened to me in my life and career. So, why? Why did I leave the law? That's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to talk to you about why I left the practice of law to go into full-time entrepreneurship. And I want to share this because I know that some of you are in that space that I was in, right? Kind of feeling like, I feel like I'm kind of stuck here. I feel like I've done all I can here. I feel like there's more out there in the world. There is more that I can do. I feel that this is not how I'm supposed to leave this earth. I'm not supposed to leave this earth doing what I'm doing now. I could take what I know, I could take what I know how to do, and I could really go out in the world and create an impact. So that's what I want to talk about today. And lean in, and I want you to let me know in the comments, what your thoughts are. Are you thinking about leaving? Did you leave? Did you have any of these same types of things that I had? I'm going to talk to you about what made me leave, the fears that I had, and some of the things that I did to prepare. There's another video on this podcast, and I'll tag it, where I talk about 8 steps that I really went through. But I want to give you in this video the behind the scenes, like what was going on and why I really decide to leave. I really, you know, as I called it, good check. Good check consistently every 2 weeks to come into the wild world of entrepreneurship. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. I never, I became a lawyer on a whim. It was never my dream. So many people, they had lawyers in their families and that's what they saw, and they just had this long desire to become a lawyer. So, when they went to college, they did political science and all the things. Took all of the types of courses that would help them, government and anything that would help them to stand out, I guess, on their applications and stand out as somebody who people would say, oh, yeah, you're going to go to law school. Well, that wasn't my reality. That was not my reality. My grandfather was a lawyer in Jamaica many, many years ago, but he died before I was even born. So I never met him. I did have an uncle who's also now deceased who was a lawyer. But again, that wasn't my frame of reference for anything that I wanted to do. The truth is that when I was a little girl growing up in Jamaica, I wanted to be a bank lady or a truck driver. Don't ask me where the truck driver comes from. The bank lady, I know because in Jamaica, well, first of all, when we went to school, we used to wear uniforms. Everybody would have a uniform. But in the banks, all the women would be dressed up in the banks and they would have on their uniform. And I just felt, I don't know, it just felt so important and fun. And so I wanted to be a bank lady. And ironically enough, I did become a bank lady when I was 21 years old, working at a trust company. But that's a story for another day, and I'll tell it to you. So I did become a bank lady, and I guess I did become a truck driver because I did have a big, when I say big, big black Chevy Tahoe that I used to wheel around the streets of Miami and South Miami and Miami Beach. You know, when Miami Beach was all the rage, it was me and my Chevy Tahoe. So I guess I did accomplish those two things. But when I was in graduate school, that's when I decided that I wanted to become a lawyer. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we decided, you know, he after I got off that conversation, because he said that he was going to go to law school. That's when I decided, oh, okay, I'm just going to go to law school as a whim. Again, I had not prepared for that because I went to college at 16, and at 16, I went to college to get a degree in fashion merchandising, in retail marketing and management. And then at the time that I made this decision, I was getting my MBA in international business management. So it wasn't like I had this, you know, this plan to go into the practice of law. But when I did end up, you know, going to law school, I loved it. When I tell you I loved it, I loved it. I loved being I loved learning, you know, how to communicate. I loved learning how to make arguments, persuasive arguments. I loved the whole idea of the courtroom. One of my favorite classes was courtroom is theater. And what my professor was teaching us is really how to leverage that space and understand that being a lawyer and being a trial lawyer is really an art. It's an art and it is a skill, and the two have to combine. And I was thrilled by that. When I was in law school, I interned at the San Francisco Public Defender's Office, the San Jose Public Defender's Office, the California Death Penalty Appeals Office. I knew that I wanted to be a trial attorney. And so I poured all of my, you know, time and effort into making sure that I had internships that gave me that opportunity. I was on the appellate advocacy team, all the things. And that's how I prepared, right, to become a lawyer. It wasn't all of the things that happened before. In 1995, I graduated from law school and did become a lawyer, a trial lawyer in the public defender's office. That was the best training that I could ever have asked for. I learned, and that's where I learned to ask masterfully ask questions, to understand how to really analyze both sides of an issue and really look at all of the facts, look at all of the evidence, look at all of the information, and start to parse that information, start to really synthesize that information, start to reframe that information. It was where I learned how to speak on my feet. You know, I would be trying one case or ready to try one case, and we come into court, and the state attorney's like, oh, we're dismissing that case, but we're ready to go on this one. And you got to just pivot, right? So even when we're thinking about, you know, the transitioning out of, you know, one career to the next, transitioning from full-time corporate space to entrepreneurship, that pivot, I am good at that pivot. And I learned that pivoting from being a trial lawyer. And I have taken that into this entrepreneurial space because I will pivot in a minute. I will pivot in a minute. So I practiced for over 2 decades. This year, September 22nd, will be my 30 years since I was licensed the first time as a lawyer. I have two other licenses in Georgia and in the Virgin Islands. So why did I leave? Like, why did I leave all of that? While I was a lawyer, I became an arbitrator. I became a mediator. I taught law school. I taught high school when I was in law school. Um, I taught at University of Miami. I've taught at University of Tampa. Like all those things while I was practicing law. So why did I leave? I left because of what I said at the beginning, that the law, not only is she a jealous mistress, she's a restrictive asshole. And what do I mean by that? When you are practicing law, there are so many rules and regulations that you have to put up with. You have to, and that's a good thing, right? So so that we're not just out here just doing what we do, like we kind of see what's going on now. But there's just a lot that you cannot do, and um in terms of things that really are near and dear to you. And yes, there are people who do that, and there are people who do that because they have their own firms and they could do whatever. However, I was always working for a firm. At one time, I did have my own law firm. But for the most part, as a lawyer, I always worked for a firm, which means that that's somebody else's business, right? And they're trying to run their business and they're trying to make money. So they ain't trying to have you do what you want to do. And in the last years of me practicing law, so I retired at the end of 2019. In the last years of practicing law, a couple of things were happening. One, I found myself in Tampa working in an area where, though I had had issues with opposing counsel, in the wild, wild south of Miami, being disrespectful and just acting up and just doing dumb shit. The things that I experienced as a lawyer in the last 3 years of my practice of law in Tampa were beyond, beyond. I mean, the way that people talk to me, the way that they would try to get me in trouble, right, by texting my boss behind my back or emailing my boss behind my back because I wouldn't do something that they wanted me to do. Um, One lawyer who was consistently like yelling at me in my face, like jumping up in my face. It was a lot. The other thing that was happening was I had for many years said that I wanted to leave. Like I really wanted to leave the practice of law. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to have a good time because at one point during the stint of practicing law, this here is going to get on my nerves. During the practice of law, I had gone into entrepreneurship. So I owned a wedding and event planning business. So I did that for a little while still doing practicing law, but full time was my entrepreneurship, part time was practicing law. And I remember the feeling of the joy around that and the ability to create what I wanted to create, how I wanted to create it without the trappings and the restrictions of and the limitations of other people. So I decided that yeah, I started to feel this thing like it was time to go. So, like, for you, as you're listening to this, like, are you feeling like it's time to go? Have you had those feelings, or did you have those feelings at some point before you transitioned out? Like, yeah, there's just things that don't sit well with me, and I need to go. I remember one day I had a conversation. I'd seen, I don't know if you remember this. There was a woman a black woman, and it was she was in a Waffle House, and she was being dragged by the police. They had pulled her dress down, they had her breast out, everything. It was just ridiculously disgusting. And I remember talking about that and being told by my boss, like, can't really say too much about that, right? Um, because, and I'll leave that there. But anyway, can't really say too much. And that made me think, hmm, because it was our client. So it made me think about how important I was to them, right? That this incident happened, that it was so egregious that it impacted me, that I was talking about it and I was told that I couldn't talk about it, and I couldn't make a stink about it because it would impact their money. So in that moment, I was like, oh, your money is more important than me, which, hey, it's their business. They could do what they want. But it started me like really on this journey of like, we got to do something else. The other thing that happened is I was sitting in a deposition. You may have heard me tell this before. I was sitting in a deposition and I was deposing meaning asking questions of an expert witness. And one of the things that we ask is, how much money have you made being an expert witness, so that we can show bias, right? So that you're a hired gun. This is what you do. And he was telling me that in the past like 3 or 4 years, he had made millions, millions. And we were sitting in his beautiful, high-rise office building. He had made millions. And he made millions with what he knew, not with what he knew, but with what he knew. He was a doctor, he's a medical doctor. And what he would do is one side or the other, we hire these doctors in personal injury cases to look at medical records and to give their opinion about whatever, we need them to give their opinion about. Here's the rub. They never meet the patient. They don't examine the patient. They don't talk to the patient. If the patient was sitting right next to them in that deposition and we didn't tell them, that person wouldn't know. All they do is review records, and they're making all this money. That got me thinking, sis, you in the wrong part of your profession. Like you are playing yourself over here. That made me change what I wanted to do. It made me start thinking, oh, I can make more money with what I know than with what I'm doing, right? So, yes, I was using what I know to actually practice law, to be a trial lawyer. However, I could not have those long hours and ornery judges and nasty ass opposing counsel and deadlines and judges who you have your ticket for vacation and they're like, yeah, cancel it because you go on to trial, and then you cancel your vacation and then they cancel the trial. But I'm just ranting right there. But yeah, that happened anyway. And so I just decided like, oh, I got to get out of here. Like I got to figure out how I can make that work, because it clearly works. And what I noticed also in that expert field is that they were mostly white men. I think I met 2 or 3 women who were experts in all the time that I was doing it. And I think one was a Black woman, I think. But it wasn't, they didn't look like us. Just know that they didn't look like us. And they're making all of this money. So I was like, nah, you got to do something. Like, you have got to figure it out. And I want you to think about, like, in your own professions where you are right now, and you're feeling this itch that I was feeling. Like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing about what people are doing? The people who have the same types of education and degrees and certifications and all the things that you have. What are they out in the world doing and making money instead of actually doing the thing? Like, they're using their mind to go make money. What are they doing? And what can you do? Because that's what I started thinking about. What can I do? And what I knew that I could do was to speak. What I knew that I could do was to teach. I had already been doing it. I had been doing it for 2 decades. So why couldn't I go out and do that? It's not right. And I wouldn't have the restrictions of the law. So I decided that I was going to go on that journey. But it wasn't without fear. It wasn't without doubt. I was scared. Listen, you are giving up. You're saying, oh, you're going to give up this good check that you're getting. I always call it a good check because it was a good check. You ain't got to worry about it. It's going to be there. Good check. And you are going to now go out into the world and basically forage. I don't care what anybody says. Basically forage to go find that money. And it's not easy. And actually, it is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Yes, I had done entrepreneurship before, but that just seemed easier. I promise you, it seemed easier back then. It's hard now. It's hard, but I decided that I was going to bet on me. And one of the things that made me really think about that was I had a conversation with Tiffany Dufu, and I was she is with Tory Burch right now. And I think she's the president of Tory Burch Foundation. I was looking in my notes in my phone the other day and I saw the notes from when I had my phone call with her. And I remember sitting in my car outside of a UPS store. I had gone to mail something and I was sitting in my car outside of a UPS store having this conversation with her, and I was saying to her that I wanted to leave, that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. And she said, "What is holding you back?" And I said, "The fear of financial insecurity." I had been so independent and being able to take care of myself and my son and, all the things. And I was married, but I was still, and I'm still married, but I just had this fierce independence. And so I was really afraid. And that is still my biggest fear is financial insecurity. And then she said to me, she said, "Kelly," she said, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I said, "Oh, I'm practicing law. This is my job." She said, "Great." She said, "You are the most financially insecure you will ever be in your life right now with that one job." And I was like, she was like, "The day they decide that they no longer want you and they don't want to employ you, that good check is gone." And there it all goes. She said, "I need you to get a career portfolio." That's what she told me. "I need you to get a career portfolio." And what she was saying to me is that I needed to do something where if I was going to stay there, I needed to do some other things where I was going to bring in money. So in entrepreneurship, you hear people talk about the seven, having seven revenue streams or having seven streams of revenue. That's really what she was saying to me. You cannot, Kelly, just rely on this one check. And she was right. She was right. And so, scared or not, in my book back there, you can't really see it because the light doesn't like the white, but Unapologetic AF, 34 Ways to Unleash Your Inner Badass, I talk about doing it scared. And I had to take that on. I had to decide that I was going to do this scared. And it would be great if I could tell you, "Oh yeah, I just all of a sudden jumped in and I was like, oh, we gonna do this." No, baby. No. I was continuously one foot in, one foot out, one foot in, one foot out. Because why? The good check was there. And some of you might be like that. Some of you might be having that. Like, I want to go, but damn, this check is good. I want to go, but damn, them benefits are good. I want to go, but damn, I ain't really got to worry about nothing. I don't have to go out and get the clients. They come. But I tell you that the freedom, the creative freedom that you get in entrepreneurship, there's nothing like it. And so I I started to do the research. So what are I started to look at what I needed to do. I started to think about, if you want to be a professional speaker, I don't need anyone to teach me how to speak, but what do I need? I need to learn how to run a business. I need to learn how to run a speaking business. So I started doing research and I started, finding out who's out there, what organizations are there. I started talking to people, not too many, because, here's a sidebar. If you're doing this while you're still at your job, be careful. Don't tell everybody. Everybody don't need to know. All right, back. um, and so I started doing the research. I started talking to people that I knew that I could trust and who could help me to figure out how I could get to where it is that I wanted to go. And I was talking to people who were where I wanted to go, right? Not people who had done it in the past or who had never done it, or kind of, I was looking for people who the vision, the far vision, not the present vision, but the future vision of what I wanted to do, so that I could learn from them about how to do it. I hired coaches. I hired one coach who was he was so funny. And when I told him, my plan and how I wanted to leave and when I wanted to leave, because I told him at that time, so this was 2018, and I told him, was it maybe 2018, 2019, 2018. I told him that I wanted to leave, but I wasn't going to leave till 2022. He was like, what? He was like, that's 4 years from now. I'm like, yeah, I got to get all my stuff together. I got to get my money right. I got to start saving. I got to do all the things. He was like, yeah, no, that's too far. You're going to leave in 2020. Well, October 22nd, 2019, I learned that I would no longer have a job after December 31st of 2019. So yeah, he was right. He was right, 2020. But I actually had said August of 2020. But it came before, right? And I could have leaned into the fears that I had, and saying, you got to go, you had that good check, you got to go replace that good check with another good check. You have decades of experience as a lawyer. You could easily go get another job as a lawyer. You're an excellent trial lawyer. Somebody would be like over the moon to have you be on their team, right? And on their trial team in their office. I was a partner in a law firm. I was a partner in two law firms. So I had all the goods, and I had everything to go look for another job. Shit, I had the stuff to start my own law firm if I really wanted to. I just chose in that moment that I wasn't going to do that. I chose in that moment that because I say, like, when you put stuff in the atmosphere, it'll speak to you and it'll call you to account. And I was being called to account at that moment to see if I truly wanted what I was saying that I wanted, which was the freedom to go out and to use my voice and to use my skills and my expertise and my wisdom to create an impact in the world, a different type of impact, an impact that I got to decide what that looked like, what that felt like, what that sounded like. I had to decide. And some of you are in that position right now. You are in the position where you need to decide. Maybe you didn't get that, have that conversation that I had on October 22nd, that in 2 months I wasn't going to have a job. Maybe you haven't had that conversation. Maybe you haven't had that conversation yet. Maybe you will end up having that conversation soon, and you have to make a decision. And yes, I was not ready. I was not fully ready. I did have some savings, but not what I was hoping. I had not really planned all of it. I planned, I did my, I really worked on my brand and my positioning. That was all good. There are people who thought I was not practicing law anymore because of how well I had been positioning myself while I was still practicing. So those pieces were good, but there were other things that were not good, right? That were not in place. I hadn't really learned at that moment how to build the foundation of a business, and it has taken years. And I'm still learning those pieces, right, to build all of the foundations of the business. But I could have let all of those things, say to me, this ain't the time. Go back and practice law. Wait till you get all the things together. And had I done that, it would have been the biggest mistake I would have made. Here's why. When I decided, so December 31st, 2019, check's gone. Good check is gone. And I decided that we're just going to go all in. We're going to take this entrepreneurship thing and we're going to ride it till the wheels fall off. I said I had already done so well in branding myself and putting myself out there as an unconscious bias expert at that time, is what I was focused on in teaching and speaking about. That when George Floyd was murdered in 2025, and all of these companies were like, oh, we need somebody to come help us, talk to these people, come talk to our people, have these listening sessions. My phone, my email, everything was blowing up. One of the reasons that happened is because in the wake of George Floyd's murder, I was like probably the first person, I'll say, to do this kind of listening session. And I had put a post out on Facebook, and it was like to white people, hey, white people, come meet me on Zoom so I can answer your questions, because I know you got questions and you probably ain't got a black friend to answer, right? And so I did this Zoom session, and then other people started asking me to do it like further. And then I was like, hold up. Y'all need to pay me for this. Y'all need to run me my money for this. And so companies started calling me and asking me to do that. Had I leaned into the fear of losing that good check, had I leaned into not betting on myself and just staying in the comfort of what I had known for so many decades, what I had gone to school for, what I had gone into, all kinds of student loan debt for, what I had sacrificed for, had I leaned into that as opposed to leaning into knowing that I am a powerful, brilliant woman who can create anything and can do anything that she puts her mind to, I would have lost those opportunities to really establish myself in this space, in this speaking industry. I would have lost the research, right? That I got from being in this business and being able to work with other women and to think about, and see what's happening in this industry to get to the point now where I am hosting my own event, the Speaking Industry Expo, to shift this entire industry. So I share this because some of you may be in that space right now. Some of you might, even if you have already transitioned, you might be a little, shaken with what's going on, and you need to pivot and you're not really sure what to do. And you're like, I was doing good in my business, but now things are kind of messed up. And, maybe I should just go back to the security. Listen, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not in your pockets. I'm not in your household. What I am saying to you is I want you to, before you just decide that to take that route because you feel that it's just easier that way, I want you to think about what you were able to do when you decided to make the leap in the first place and see if you can make that work. Because when they say the law is a jealous mistress, what they're talking about is, it just takes your time, your energy, your soul sometimes. And when I say it's a restrictive asshole, there's so many boxes, right? My son calls me a rule follower, and it's because I had so many rules as a lawyer that I had to follow. And if I run afoul of those, they could just take my whole livelihood. And so for me, that restriction is unacceptable. And one of my guiding values is freedom. And so why did I leave the law? For my freedom. On October 22nd, 2019, before I even went into the office to have the conversation with my boss, I was in my office and a voice said to me to turn around. There was nobody in my office. It wasn't on the phone. It wasn't on a computer. There was nothing. It was just this voice said to me, turn around. I turned around to look at the back wall of my office. And on that back wall, I had all my degrees and all my certifications and all my things. And I just sat there for a second and I looked around. And then out of nowhere, I promise you, like out of nowhere, and I had never, ever, ever in my life said these words. Out of nowhere, these three words came out of my mouth. My freedom papers. And I sat there, and how I said it was my freedom papers. Those documents, all the work that I had done, all of the certifications, everything, those were my freedom papers. Because I could take all of that. They could take a job, right? And at that point, I didn't know I was losing my job, but something knew that I was losing my job and wanted me to be okay. right? When I heard the news, those documents represented the knowledge, the skills, the fortitude, the audacity, the expertise, the wisdom that I had gained in decades. And it was telling me that I would be okay. So I turned back around, went back to doing my work. A couple hours later, there was a beep on my phone, and my boss called me into his office. The other partner was sitting on the chair, and that's when they told me, by the end of the year, you will no longer be employed. So that's how I left the law. It wasn't on my time, it was on theirs. But what I had done, because I had already had that itch, was to prepare. I was prepared for that. And in my spirit, something knew that that day was the day. And in fact, before I even went into their office, I hung up the phone. They said, "Could you come in here?" I said to myself, "Today is the day." Now I tell you, I've never really talked to myself like that. Like I don't really talk to myself, but something about that day, and that day, my spirit was preparing me to be ready, to be um to be powerful enough. And so when they told me that, and they said, we can no longer afford to pay you, and yada yada yada, all the things. One day I'll tell that whole story. Um, I was like, okay. I said, okay. And he said, okay. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, well, what were you expecting? Thankfully, Spirit had downloaded to me to be prepared and to know that today was the day, right? That was the day. But I don't know where this came from. But I had earned my freedom papers. There was nothing that they could do about that. So, oh man, I did not expect this to happen. So, um, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for you to look at everything that you have done, everything that you have earned. All of the skills, the tools, the expertise, the wisdom. And know that no matter what happens, no matter what they say, no matter who says they can or can't afford you, those are your freedom papers. Those are your freedom papers. All of your expertise, your experiences, those are your freedom papers. So, why did I leave the law? To secure my freedom. All right, y'all. I didn't expect this. Ooh, I did not expect that. And now I'm going to invite you to come hang out with me. I'm going to invite you to come hang out with me November 3rd through the 5th. If you're ready, if you've gotten your freedom papers, if you want your freedom papers, if you know that it is time for you to just go out and bet on yourself. It is time for you to not just be comfortable with somebody's good check, but know that you have the ability and the audacity to go out and create that good check on your own. And you want to use your mind to do that. You want to use your expertise to drive your business. Then I need you to be in Atlanta with me November 3rd through 5th for the Speaking Industry Expo, also known as the Six. That's a short name for it. That's what we call it. You need to be there. This place, this room, this atmosphere, this ecosystem, I created just for us. I created it for people like me. I created it for us to be able to stand in the power of who we are, to really truly stand in our greatness, to be in a space where we are respected and valued, and where we are seen, and where people understand that we are not just people out here who you could throw on your stage and bring into your organizations and have at your events to give information and then just say thank you. No, we are experts. We are valuable. The information that we impart to you is invaluable. It is, as I talk about myself, it is fire forged wisdom that through tears and hard work and sacrifice, we have come to a space where we have the ability to take information that is free everywhere that you could, but we have taken that and run it through the filters of our brilliance to create frameworks and create ways in which we deliver this type of information to change lives, to transform organizations, to shift perspectives in ways that other people cannot. Because if they could, you wouldn't want us there. You wouldn't need us there. And there is a value to that. And we have chosen to use this expertise to build a business. And that information that you all are hiring us for is our product. And that product costs money. And so if you want to really be in a space where that is what we're all about, that is how we are working to shift the industry, to shift the dynamic, to put some respect on our name, to run us our money, then you need to be at the 6th, November 3rd through 5th. 2025 is going down in the A, as they say, Atlanta. All you got to do is go grab your ticket at speakingindustryxpo.com. It's XPO, not EXPO. Speakingindustryxpo.com. You can grab your ticket. You can sign up to become an exhibitor. You can be a sponsor. If you're a decision maker or vetted actual media outlet, and you want to cover the event, so decision makers and media outlets, you get complimentary tickets. We have, just a limited amount for that, but it's a whole ecosystem. It's a place where we're about to shift and shake shit up in this industry, because it is about time that we get the respect that we deserve as subject matter experts. I didn't go through law school and practice law for over 3 decades to get the knowledge and the skills and the abilities that I have for you to ask me to speak for exposure or for free. So if you want to be in the space so that you can become powerfully positioned, so that people run you your money, so that you get paid the value exchange that you're providing for the person hiring you, then meet me at the 6th. SpeakingIndustryXpo.com. Until next time, take care.